I think it's often triggered by what I'm going to call the martyr, who says yes to everything because they don't hold boundaries, right? And so when you hold the boundary on them, then they need to guilt you in, but I've done this and this and this and this and that and 18 other things for you. And what you end up finding out is like half the time they missed their deadline or they did have to work overtime because they did the thing for you, where they should have said the same thing that you just said. No, I'm sorry, I can't cover you for you today because I've still got 4 hours of work and I have 4 hours of time.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tanya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how. The most dangerous employee or team member isn't the one who steals your money. It is the one who steals your energy, especially while appearing to work hard. Today, we are going to explore energy theft. How good people, usually with good intentions, can slowly drain the life out of your business one interaction at a time. So last week, we introduced our 3 theft framework: energy, time, and then money. Energy theft always comes first, as Gwen educated us, and it's oftentimes the hardest to detect because it feels personal instead of professional. Now, Gwen, what you have said is this matters because by the time you notice time and money theft, energy theft has often been happening for months. You are worn down, and energy as a business owner is your most valuable resource. Without it, you can't lead, you can't innovate, you can't make good decisions. So today, Gwen is going to help us cover exactly what energy theft looks like in daily interactions, why good people oftentimes do this, usually unconsciously, the warning signs that you have been ignoring, and how you can protect your energy without feeling guilty. So Gwen, why don't you start us off with telling us what energy theft actually looks like?
So this, of course, is the biggest challenge with energy theft is it is not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's going to look different for each person, and every situation is also going to be different. And so energy doesn't have a real measurement that we can go to. Money obviously has a very tactile measurement that we can go to, and time sort of has a measurement because we've got, the watches, the hours, the minutes, the seconds. But energy, I mean, there's energy for, powering our houses energy, but personal energy, we don't have a really good measurement for. And so I think that's one of the biggest reasons energy theft happens, because we don't pay attention to our personal energy, because every day our energy starts at a level and drops to another level over the course of a day. So also it's like, is it where it should be at this point in time in the day? And so there's so many factors there that make it difficult to actually identify, is my energy being taken? And so you have to go to some more, what I'm going to call obvious kind of things to start. And my favorite one is dread. Am I excited to talk to this person, to spend time with this person, to interact with this person in any way, shape, or form? Or do I have this, kind of weight that comes over me when I think about interacting with this person in any particular situation? If that weight is happening, that would signal to me, that would be a little flag saying, ooh, that sounds like an energy drain. And then the next question is, does it happen every time, or does it only happen in certain situations? So for example, some people are not an energy drain when they're in a group, but they're a huge energy drain when they're one-to-one. Some are exactly the opposite. They are not an energy drain one-to-one, but they're a huge energy drain in a group, right? So we start looking at when are we seeing it? And we talked about it in the prior episode. All of this is about identifying patterns. Where do you see consistency over time? Hard to identify the first time. If there's any particular day, it's like, oh, I do not want to talk to so-and-so. I probably also don't want to talk to anybody that day. And so if that's the case, that's not a pattern. That's a me issue. That's not a them issue. But if every week when I'm supposed to talk to, let me say a client, for example, because clients can be energy drains just as well as employees, and contractors can be energy drains. If I'm dreading talking to that client every time, that's signaling an energy drain.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going back to the last episode, you used this great term of energy vampire. And after the last episode, I was thinking I feel like energy vampires fall into 4 categories. So one is the energy vampire that needs constant reassurance. One, which I think you really unpacked well for us last episode, but I'll want you to do that again, is the pot stirrer.
Ah, yes.
Right? That's number 2. Number 3 is that person who dumps their emotional labor on you. And then 4, I would say, is the guilt manipulator. Person who makes you feel badly for doing what you're supposed to be doing as the business owner, or for holding boundaries in some way.
Right.
So let's start with the person who needs constant reassurance. Do you want to walk me through that? Do you want me to kick that one off?
Go ahead and kick it off, and then I'll add my thoughts.
So when I think of the constant reassurance person, it's like, at first you're just like, well, they need confidence, right? It's like, that's all.
Right.
They're new at this, or this is a new skill set, and they just need to know that they've got it. But then you find, they start asking the exact same question multiple times in different ways. They need validation for every decision, not just the first time they make this kind of decision, not just for the big decisions. I find they love to call a meeting. They love to have the meeting about the meeting because they don't want any surprises in the actual meeting. So can't we just talk about this ahead of time, and then you can tell me what you're going to say so that I can go into the meeting totally prepared. Although I don't know why we bother having the other meeting if we've already had a meeting about the meeting. The person, they want you to constantly repeat your instructions. And you end up having 5 emails back and forth. We're like, okay, let me just make sure I understand this. And you're like, I don't know how else I can write this.
So, that situation, it is a tough situation, because what I have found is often they are, I don't think they're necessarily consciously doing this, but they are at least subconsciously attention seekers. I need to be the center of attention. I need everyone to be focused on me and what's happening. And like I said, it may not be in that obvious way. And where, as you were saying all this, I was running through back in my prior world as a knitting instructor. There would inevitably be someone in class who, pretty much after every stitch, would say, "Hey, can you verify that I did this right?" Now, the classes that I was teaching, we were not teaching how to knit. We were above beyond that, right? So it was like, no, you've got this, right? But what I realized in helping some other teachers who would struggle with this, because my students wouldn't ever become that needy. And I had some teachers sit in, it's like, how do you have none of those students? And it's like, well, part of it is I don't reinforce bad behavior, right? So when they're wanting my attention, I don't give it to them when I know they've got it. And so that's one of the places where I think this energy vampire happens, is because we don't empower them to say, no, you've got this. We just keep responding. And every time we respond, we're reinforcing that we will respond, which is actually the only thing they need. They only want the response. They don't actually need the information.
Okay. Talk to me about the pot stirrer.
So the pot stirrer it's another form of needing attention, right? But in this case, what they want is everybody to be in a tizzy is really what's happening, right? And so they're always into everybody else's business, whether their business is the job that they're doing or whatnot. So they're checking in all of these other places that are not necessarily their responsibility. And or then of course getting into the personal pot stirring about, oh, I heard your son got laid off. It's like that doesn't matter unless you're hiring for a position that the son might be qualified for. That's a fine conversation to have, out of work, but it's not anything that needs to be happening in work. But often it looks like work because they're checking in and seeing, hey, can I help you? Can I be of assistance? We're getting into things that's like, do you not have work to do? You probably do. Why don't you go do that work? Right. As opposed to let me help you do the thing that you're doing. It's like, no, you don't need to do that. We need for you to do the work that we're actually paying you to do. And so the pot stir ends up taking other people's attention. And so often they are not doing it with a CEO. So the challenge with the pot stir is they're stealing energy, but they're not stealing energy in a way that you see it. They're stealing energy from your other workers, your other folks in your team. And typically the individual team members aren't saying anything about it because they don't want to be a whiner. Right. And they often also think it's only them. They don't assume that that's happening with everybody.
Right.
Right. So the example we talked about, this was a example for one of my clients. The CEO did know she had a pot stirrer. And she's like, oh, but she's been here for a really long time. This is also part of the issue as they helped me start the business. I couldn't have gotten here without them. We call it misplaced loyalty because they did the thing that they were supposed to do and that they were paid to do. And now we're still rewarding them for past work that is no longer current work. And so we're saying, oh yeah, no, we still have to support them because at one point they supported us. Well, but we paid them to do that job and they did that job and that's great. But once that pot stir gets going, they go around and around and around and we don't realize how much time it's taking away from the other jobs. And in this particular situation, I kept saying, you got to let them go. 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 It was, I think, nearly a year before they let this person go. But here is the thing. They let this person go. And part of it was like, I don't know how we're going to get all the work done. I don't know how I'm going to replace the job, but I don't know, who I can find to do it. And I mean, the list went on and on and on. They let this person go, who, by the way, was the highest paid person out of all of the staff. I think was paid the same or more than the CEO was at the time. And they didn't replace that person for 9 months. 9 months because everyone else could be so much more productive. All of the work that needed to be done, she wasn't actually doing that much work because she was spending a lot of time stirring pots. And so allocating a little of her work out to each of, 2 or 3 different people, they were like, oh yeah, I've got plenty of time to do that because I'm not dealing with her pot stirring. But it's very sneaky because, like I said, everyone thinks it's only happening to them, so nobody talks about it. But it's actually happening to everybody.
Right.
So
and I think that's
it's at the 1,000 paper cuts, but we've got 10 paper cuts on everybody.
Right. Well, and that's where, it steals the energy, but I mean, that's also an example of time theft as well.
Oh, yeah. Right? Well, that's the thing. Most of the energy theft really becomes time theft pretty fast.
Right. So, finally, we have the second to last, actually, is the person who dumps their emotional labor I refer to this as the person who, honestly, they just need a therapist, but they don't know they need a therapist. And so they're using you or their colleagues as the therapist. How do you describe the person who dumps their emotional labor?
Well, so that one is really challenging because it really, and I will use this phrase when I'm working with my clients. It's like, oh, this is above my pay grade.
Mhm.
Is they're actually asking you to do work that is above your pay grade, right? Your work is to provide a job for them if you're the
Mhm.
CEO, with, guidelines and all of the things that go along with it. But your work is not to solve all of their problems,
Mhm.
right? And so this one's tough because you really have to hold a boundary and say, this is not appropriate for this space, this
Mhm.
time, this whatever. And I think the boundaries piece is a huge piece of boundaries that are held well tend to have less energy leaks
Mhm.
than places that don't have boundaries held well. But it's a hard conversation to basically say, good God, you need help, woman. Good God, you need help, dude. Go get some therapy, right? It's not an easy conversation to have. And of course, you can't really have it that way. But you do have to say, this conversation is not what this job is about,
Mhm.
right? And getting them to be really aware of this is not the space and time. Now, a lot of times it is disguised as explaining why I wasn't able to do the thing that I was supposed to do,
Mhm.
right? Which is okay occasionally. But if that's always happening, back to pattern recognition. This
Right.
means we've got some bigger issues. And so understanding that the pattern is they aren't able to do this job because they can't emotionally handle it right now,
Mhm.
whatever that may be, is also part of your job as the CEO. Because if they can do the job and not do the emotional dump, great. But if they can't, then they are not actually capable of doing the job that needs to be done right now. And doesn't make them a bad person, but it just means this is not the job for them.
Yeah. And so, like what you're describing, right, is there's the person who, is using you as their therapist during work hours, the person who's sharing, or oversharing personal problems affecting their performance, the person who expects you to manage their feelings about work tasks, about clients, or who pushes their emotional regulation on you. Like you said, right? I mean, it's like prime thing is like, this is above my pay grade. I cannot regulate your emotions. Like that's a thing only you get to do.
That's all you,
Uh,
baby.
I do not get to do that. And I find that when you assert those boundaries, as you pointed out, and they push back, sometimes that person is the same person who becomes the guilt manipulator, right? Which is that person who makes you feel badly for setting boundaries. What does that look like? That person who guilt trips you as the energy vampire look like?
Well, so the first thing is guilt is never appropriate in this kind of it. Well, I kind of feel like guilt's almost never appropriate about anything. Um, we should just be able to do our job and not have to
Mhm.
guilty about, whether we're doing it or whether we're not doing it. But trying to guilt someone into doing something is not actually helpful. And so if it's like, oh, but I can't because of this and this and this, back to it is not your job to provide someone a livelihood.
Mhm.
It is your job to fill a role that needs to be done so that you can have a business that can function profitably.
Mhm.
That's your job as a business owner. But we get stuck believing our job is to take care of our employees. Now, not saying that we should abuse our employees or any of the rest of it, because that is absolutely not true. But it's not to keep people on who are not actually performing the job that needs to be done. And so if someone is guilting you into trying to do something different, the first question you have to ask is, why are you allowing yourself to be guilted? Boundaries,
Mhm.
right? And then the next is, And why are they trying to guilt me into it? Because I shouldn't have to guilt anybody into doing anything. You and I are really good. I mean, I love my boundaries. So we're pretty good about boundaries. And I will from time to time reach out to you during a non-official time and say, hey, are you available to talk? But 100% that if you say no, I am not going to make you feel guilty about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I respect your boundaries because I expect you to respect mine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're feeling guilty about it, the first question I want to ask is, why? Are you not respecting their boundaries? Right? Are you holding boundaries for you but not allowing other people to hold their boundaries? Or are you really not holding your boundaries?
Well, and I think I'm going to come to the defense of the person who feels guilty, because I think it can be subtle. So how I see it play out with, right, is it sometimes comes under the guise of teamwork.
Oh, I love that one.
So, it's like, well, you can cover for me while I take a later lunch, or you can cover for me for this other thing. And, and you say, actually, I've got a deadline today. And unfortunately, I'm already up to the wire. So I can't cover that because, yes, it's only a half hour. Maybe it's only 20 minutes, but to cover that will push me behind and I can't make that happen. And then it comes like, but I thought we were part of a team. But I cover for you. Well, yeah, but I don't ask you to miss your deadline to cover for me. You're asking me to miss my deadline, right? And then we start to feel badly like, well, maybe I should have started my project earlier. Maybe I shouldn't be running up to the end of this deadline. Because if I was, if I had, done more yesterday, or if I was willing to work late today, then I could accommodate this. I think a lot of times that's what the guilt trip sort of thing looks like.
Well, and I think it's often triggered by what I'm going to call the martyr, who says yes to everything because they don't hold boundaries. Right? And so when you hold the boundary on them, then they need to guilt you in, but I've done this and this and this and this and that and 18 other things for you. And what you end up finding out is like half the time they missed their deadline or they did have to work overtime because they did the thing for you, where they should have said the same thing that you just said. No, I'm sorry, I can't cover you for you today because I've still got 4 hours of work and I have 4 hours of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I will say another way that this plays out, and I think this is also where it plays out on the client front. But so you as the business owner are trying to make some shifts, right? You're trying to work through your people, and there's that person who only wants to work with you. And you are trying to be a good business owner and being like, actually, no, that's Tanya. Tanya is the best person to answer that question. They're like, but Gwen, you've always taken such good care of me, Gwen. And you're like, yes, but Tanya is the right person for you. She's updated on that project. She can help you out. And they're like, oh, so you're too good for me now. Is that it? Right? So they're like all hurt because you're actually trying to, issue the appropriate chain of command, but it hurts their feelings, Gwen. And you're so mean.
Boundaries.
I love how everything I come up with, you're like, and boundaries, Tanya.
And boundaries.
It's all about boundaries.
Once again, boundaries. Because that's all that is truly what they're trying to do, is manipulate you. And if you don't believe what you're saying, it is easy to get sucked into it. If I don't believe that Tanya is actually the better solution, which almost always my answer is yes, Tanya is my better solution, then it's easy for you to believe it. But if you can say, okay, I can do it for you, it'll be done half as well, and it'll take twice as long, and I'm going to charge you 3 times as much. But if that's really what you want, But instead, you could get it done in a half an hour. It would be done 10 times better, and it will cost you a tenth of the amount. I'll make the sacrifice and do the really bad thing. Most of the time, if you really know that that's the truth,
yeah,
it's really easy to say, no, you really don't want me.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want me for this. You want Tanya for this. I'm not going to give you good service. I'm not going to respond well. I'm not going to be available. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, no, but I really want to talk to you next week. Okay, I'm on vacation next week. You can try and reach out to me. I am not going to be available. Or you could just have time with Tanya. Tanya's really smart, better brain on a whole different set of subjects. Why don't you talk to Tanya?
Yeah, see, you make it sound so easy.
Back to boundaries. If I say, well, okay, I'll give up part of my time to do this thing.
Just this once. Those are the famous last words. It's always just this once. I'll make an exception.
And you also know that in certain situations, I will make the exception. But it's when I know it's a real crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just because I want my way.
Right.
And of course, we don't ever have to do this because we have amazing clients that don't play these games.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No. We have amazing clients who respect boundaries, and we assert our boundaries comfortably.
We assert our boundaries early on.
Yes.
We assert our boundaries early on. So I don't ever, and I can say this with absolute, I'm trying to think like, am I absolutely saying this? And it's true. I don't ever feel like my energy is ever stolen from my clients. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure most people can say that.
Yeah.
Like, I am happy to get on every call, even when I know it's going to be a hard call.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because they're going to be, sunshine and roses. I'm happy to get on with all of my clients. So I am not getting any energy drain from being on with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
I can say the same thing about the staff that we have. I can also say there have been times that I've had people on my staff that was an energy drain.
Mm-hmm.
For exactly the reasons that we were talking about. Either we aren't paying attention and I'm having to repeat myself, they're actually, needing attention, or they're really wanting to do a halfway job but get paid a full price for it. Right?
Yeah.
It has happened. It's not like I am completely immune to it, but I also stay really aware.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I start seeing that yellow flag of energy, I start asking myself, why? What's causing that yellow flag? Why is that happening? Is it a me thing? Because it can be a me thing. Or is it a them thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a situation thing? A lot of times it's a situation thing. Things have shifted enough that this is now an energy drain.
Well, then that brings us kind of to the final point, which you had referenced in the last episode too, is that very rarely is this intentional. That, most thieves, maybe absent money, aren't malicious, especially energy thieves. They're meeting their own psychological needs. And so some of the psychological needs I've heard you kind of call out is attention or connection, control, security, and validation. You want to unpack those?
And there's probably others. Back to, we can go back to, this is above my pay grade because we're starting to get to therapy now. Right? But most energy drains are not about you. They're not trying to take your energy. It is about me, right? It's about, I need the energy and this is how I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I think it's always important to realize is that just because they're an energy drain for you doesn't mean they're going to be an energy drain for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of folks are like, yeah, I don't want to let them go because then they're going to go work for someone else who's going to be miserable. And it's like, well, you're assuming that they're going to find someone exactly like you.
Yeah.
That's not true. They may find someone who just thinks that is the most perfect thing in the world because their behavior that is draining to you actually feeds other people, right? And so understanding that it's not about a right or a wrong answer. It's about understanding the right or wrong answer for you is this energy drain affecting you and your business? It may not affect someone else and their business, but also realizing you can't fix the other person. That's not your job. Well, unless your job is a therapist, then it may be your job. But
outside of therapy, however.
Yeah. But in most situations, that's not your job, right? Your job is to provide a job of a specific role with specific things. And so if their needs, whatever they are creating an energy drain and are not needs that you can easily fill in that, that energy drain, then you've got to make the call on what you're going to do about that, because it's not going to get better. Because I think that's the thing that we also assume, is that somehow magically it's going to get better.
Right.
Right. And it's not going to get better. That's not the way this works. It's not going to change automatically, because usually these really are deep set behaviors, and they aren't necessarily negative behaviors. They're just not productive in this environment.
So speaking of that, how do we get out of it? So I'm listening and I'm like, oh.
Well, that's how we get out of it, because you've made all the faces that have said, I have to do something hard. And so that's the truth of it. The way I would always start is, a lot of times people don't realize what they're doing until someone calls it out. Right. And if they call it out, it's like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. And they can stop. And if they can, great. So a simple making someone aware that this is a problem and why it's a problem can be enough. Now, if it's not, then you're going to have to take the hard action, which, generally the right behavior is some, what I would call proactive coaching. The next one is an actual performance improvement plan, and then a release out into the wild, back at, whatever that looks like. And I use the same process, whether it's an employee, a contractor, or a client. Because we need to realize that we need to do the same things with clients as well. Let them know this behavior is not appropriate, whatever that behavior happens to be.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things for us is, I don't really respond to texts. That's not my world. Now, that doesn't mean my clients don't text me from time to time, but they know it could be a while before I respond. And so none of them care if it takes me 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours to respond. If I had a client who was like, are you there? What's going on? Did you see this? Wait, like, it was this constant chain of, hey, that would be inappropriate behavior. I would start with a coaching saying, I'm sorry, I just really I'm not on my phone all the time. I don't respond to texts, and I'm only going to respond to something urgent that really is fire, flood, or blood. And the work we do isn't fire, flood, or blood. So, that's not how I'm going to respond. If it continued, then I would say, I'm sorry, if you don't stop this, we're going to have to discontinue our relationship, because it's just not going to work for me, and I'm not going to be responsive enough for you. And so therefore it's not a good fit. If they change their behavior, great. If they don't, then we call it off. Right. I would use that regardless of what the relationship is. Make people aware. This is an energy drain, and this is why I consider it a problem. And you can make it about you, right? I don't have the capacity to be able to do this. Right? If they don't respond to that, performance improvement plan, and then release. And so that means that we have to make hard choices. But if we don't, what we're doing is death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that's the thing that I think most people miss. I talk about fast hard or slow hard.
Right.
It's going to be hard regardless. But do you want to have 1,000 paper cuts, or are you going to do the hard thing?
Yeah.
And stop the bleeding.
Right.
Right. Stitches aren't fun, but it stops the bleeding.
Yeah. Well, and in the case of business, the bleeding isn't just usually for you as the CEO, right? The bleeding is systemic in the case of that person, because even if they're only stealing your energy, that's less that you have for everything else you need to do as a business owner. And I think that's the piece that people forget.
Energy is one of those pieces, like I said, hard to measure. It's how we started. It's really hard to measure. And we know we're going to lose it throughout the day. And so it's so easy for us to just assume that this additional loss is part of the day. It's just part of what we have to deal with until it's gone. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, at 5 o'clock, I'm not completely exhausted. I may be tired, but I'm not completely exhausted. What happened there? Right. And we didn't talk about this, but it is one of the ways to watch if your energy level changes also for the positive. What happened there? Back to pattern recognition. Oh, this was the week that Harry had off. Why was my energy level higher? Well, Harry wasn't here. Maybe what I've been expecting and accepting as normal is actually an energy drain. So it is about correlation and pattern recognition, which isn't necessarily easy for everybody. And back to a reason often that you need to have someone that's an outside perspective to give you perspective on it. Because often we'll just say, well, that's just me. It's just me. It's just me. It's like, that may not be just you. It may feel like you because, of course, we're very aware of us. but it might not be just you.
Yeah. So today we've talked about energy vampires, so the energy drain or the energy theft. Next week, we're going to be talking about time theft. And one of the things that you had pointed out in the last episode is sometimes, right, it becomes a graduated process. It starts with the energy theft, then it goes to the time theft, and then it gets to the big stuff where it's money. So join us next time for the discussion on time theft. We're going to cover the productivity illusion, the occasional delegation trap, and why people who are busy aren't necessarily valuable. Now, if you're recognizing yourself in today's episode, if you're exhausted by managing certain team members or even certain client relationships and it's affecting your ability to lead or your ability to show up as you know you need to as a business owner, you do not have to figure this out alone. Energy theft, like Gwen said, is often the very hardest pattern to address because it's the hardest to recognize. And even when you do recognize it, it feels personal. It can cause feelings of guilt. It can cause feelings of inadequacy. And that is why you often need outside perspective. And we encourage you to give us a call. Seek out our perspective. You can book a call directly with Gwen at everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity and break things down, explain what's going on. She'll give you her insight, and whether you choose to work with us or not, you will walk away with a clear plan of what you should do next to reclaim your energy so that you can actually build the business that you really want. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tanya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.